Yo, what is up? It's the newest episode of my devlog. So, I have a new game. The last game was a complete failure, and I was really trying to figure out how to go about making games without looking at these boring ass tutorials. So, the issue with tutorials is I don't want to listen to you. I don't know who you are. I don't care. I just want to do. That's just kind of how I am. And so what I did was I watched one tutorial. I made Flappy Bird. And it was like 6 minutes long. You could find it on YouTube. It was the shortest Flappy Bird tutorial. I went through that and then I was like, okay, I'm somewhat familiar with the engine. It's not an alien spaceship. And so what I did afterwards was I started using ChatGPT, Claude, or whatever to attempt making games. And for the most part, I was able to do stuff, but never really make it never make it too far with making the game. Why? I kind of realized I had to deconstruct why I'm not making far the game. Like I had to clean up my folders recently. I would just be attempting at making a game over and over again, making it deeper and deeper. The deepest game I got through was my Survivor's clone. But then eventually I got lost. I was like, I don't know what's going on anymore. Why? Because sometimes I'll get lazy and then I'll just not really not really pay attention to whatever I was doing. But that's kind of brings to my point about like vibe coding. I don't really understand what's the point of vibe coding. You know, I get these ads specifically for Replit over and over, and then sometimes Cloud Code. But the thing I don't understand is why did they keep targeting regular people? I have actually tested out these tools, and when it comes to vibe coding, yeah, that's absolutely pointless for the regular person. Why? Because a lot of these AI vibe coding like helpers, I don't know what they're called, agents. To me, in the hands of an untrained person, they give the illusion of progress. Yes, for the untrained person, these vibe coding apps give the illusion of progress, and it does feel good, but it is the illusion of progress. Why? Because chances are it's magic to you, and that's the issue. That's the problem. You have to at least be familiar somewhat of the inner workings. If the inner workings is literally magic, it's gibberish, it's what the fuck is this, then yeah, you can't do shit with that, you know, because you're gonna have errors. There's always gonna be issues that you just simply can't comprehend, and then you're stuck there. You know, if you're not gonna look into it, you're gonna be stuck there for hours trying to get through to the AI. And the more complex your idea is, the more tokens you're gonna really be like burning, because it's eventually gonna it always these agents always get stuck in a loop over one, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's complicated, sometimes it's as simple as the nav bar not looking correct or some bullshit. So yeah, to me it's like, yo, like what's the point of something you don't understand the ins and outs of? There's too many places it could go wrong. But anyways, that's what I was just talking about, vibe coding. So there is a solution, but a lot of these tutorials don't talk about the solution. Maybe I'll talk about the solution. I mean, it's the solution for me. So the issue with a lot of like these coding tutorials, the issue with a lot of these game tutorials, they're so syntax focused. I don't give a fuck about the syntax, man. The syntax is the least important thing, you know. It's what can I do with the code? What can I build? And there are patterns to creation when it comes to software and stuff like that. So what I had to really learn was figure out what's a good mental mapping of software. And I couldn't really formulate what I was struggling with because I don't have enough of the knowledge. That's another thing. Like if you don't know enough, it's going to be very tough to ask the right questions to get what you want out of AI. But AI is great for learning. I would say that's like the one thing I can confidently say. AI is great for learning, but make sure you don't use the AI, and get its knowledge derived from any AI chatbot or LLM. You provide an actual text, right? And then you ask AI to just keep rephrasing the verified knowledge in different ways. Why? As I learn more and become more educated, I start to notice the bullshit. I start to notice the lies. It lies a lot, but it lies with confidence. And if you don't have the knowledge, you will never catch it. It lies with confidence, and you have to call it out. So it lies even if you prompt it right and you give it resources, it will still lie with confidence. And that's the tough part, even having the knowledge to catch it lying. But anyways, so like I said, I am guilty of all that, and I am hard-headed because I still don't feel like watching tutorials. I said I'm gonna figure it out. So I don't know. I created a master file of like the docs, and then I use that to like get it to reference shit. But the one thing I really had to do was break down games, right? So I kind of broke down games into different layers because the thing is AI lies and I'm making this shit up as I go. But as long as I understand the moving parts, hopefully I'll be able to catch shit. So for this game, I know I talked a lot for 8 minutes, but from this game, all I've really done so far is just make a bunch. I started off with data, right? So, like I said, this is the first official game I'm making after Flappy Bird, after watching the tutorial. And I said, I'm just going to go figure this out. Why? There's not a lot of tutorials teaching me what I want. Yes, there's like action RPGs and whatnot, but man, I don't give a fuck about no animation. There's like too much I do not give a fuck about. The game I am building is very system heavy. I like incremental games. There was this one guy that was making or is making an incremental game, but I find his videos hard to follow, and I'm good. I also want to make this into an RPG game, right? But a lot of this shit is very information heavy, which is challenging. But the other thing that's really challenging about game development is that there's this 2D view, and then along with the 2D view, right, there's the animation setting frames, there's the tile map. I watched enough game dev content, so some of these people are even creating their own sprites, and I'm like, man, I don't want to do none of that shit. I want to make games. I don't want to, excuse me, I don't want to sit there drawing all day. Like, I started a little bit, but I want to build games. So that's why I'm going with an incremental game. I think I'm going to try and abstract some tedious, boring stuff. So yeah, because I don't know, I like testing ideas. I like having ideas and I like going with this. So first of all, yeah. So for this game, like first, so one of the issues. Okay, yeah, I'm like not talking super structured. One of the issues, so I watched a bunch of game dev videos, right? But I watched them intentionally. You know, there's this thing about scopes creep. They talk. So let me restart. I watch a lot of game dev videos. They talk about scope creep. They talk about making small games. They talk about jumping into big projects. I watch videos where it's like my first year at game dev, my first blah blah. So I watch these videos and I notice the patterns because I'm not gonna say I have a lot of time. When I started my official game dev journey, whenever the first video came out, so I don't know. I'll check. I think it's like 3 4 months. Only made Flappy Bird and I tented a bunch of games. Anyways, I felt like I noticed this pattern. You know, I'm building something, not sure what the fuck I'm building, where I'm heading. And when that's happening and it's an open loop, a lot of possibilities starts running across my mind, like possible directions with the games. And so that's kind of one of the things that clicked. And no, and the other thing is I would start build part of the reason I said I've made attempted at making games is I'm building, and then I get lost, and I don't know what I'm building anymore. I don't know what direction I'm going on because I might take a break or whatever. And that's when it started to click for me, and I realized that hey, before one of the things I really, really, really need in terms of game development is define the game, right? What the fuck am I actually building? Um, but then that helped me tremendously. Like defining the game loop and then the sub loops, which is just a repetitive action the player does. But if I could really sum it up, it's just giving a definite to the game. Because if I don't define the game like the minimum viable product, like how long exactly is this game, how many weapons, like I don't have to be explicit with the names and shit, but I could just be like, there's gonna be 10 total weapons, 10 total levels, 5 difficulty, because it's also like you're just gonna be doing dungeons in this game. So just having an end to the game, this is all that I'm doing because I have to test the idea, and I had to keep reminding myself. And that's one thing I will tell people who start making games is, bro or sis, test the idea. Like your goal should be a complete game loop, like the loop of the game that you're gonna repeat in terms of eternity for the game, right? Just test out the ideas because that's what really needs to be tested is the game idea itself. And if that doesn't fly, move on to the next game. But we should not get invested too deep into these games, even though I am guilty of that. But anyways, yeah, so I gave this game a definite ending. I said, this is what we're going to do. And then I also had to break down games in a way that makes sense for my brain. So what I decided to do was I set up game development into layers. So for example, so for this game, right? Because keep in mind, I'm also learning and I am not an expert. What I did with this game is that I the first thing I did was build the data layer for everything, for absolutely everything. Because why? Because I defined the game. I made a little outline. Like I didn't type it all up, but I answered the questions. Right? I asked Claude to create a template of my specification. It took a while to get all the right questions. It's mad long. I have it as a markdown file, and I answered the questions and filled it up with my information. But yeah, so yeah, so the layers, right? So right now, so this is just like an achievement, armor. So what I did was I split the game up into data, states, logic, and then UI, right? Like sprites and stuff like that. Why? Because I need to. This is my first game, man. I need to understand games, but most importantly, it's to be able to design and imagine games in my head. I think that's the most powerful thing as a game developer. I make music, but I also realize that there's a reason why a lot of artists drop like 20 songs or whatever. You know, it's tough to make music, right? No, it's not tough to make music, but music to share with the world is definitely challenging because there's so many ways that things can go wrong, you know? So many different elements. And the same thing with the game. There's so many different moving parts. It's like a complicated mechanical watch. So so this is the first time I'm feeling pretty positive at this attempt slash game making loop because this is what it is. This is really an attempt. I'm feeling positive because I at least understand what's going because I split everything up by data, state, then logic, and then UI. So, what is data, right? Like the data. So, this is not like how most tutorials are. So I define the data. For example, character. What is going to be saved? What is the information we need in this game? And we defined it. Now, is this proper? I don't know, but I did do a test and the test passed. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty I don't even I think it's pretty clear. So for example, I also made the comments. So we have, for example, the character needs progression stats, right? Like level, the current XP, and then we have combat stats like health, max health, base attack, base defense. So we're defining this like it's like we're making these things exist, right? It's like I'm so to me, I absolutely know what's going on and I did that for all the moving parts, man. Like and I did that for everything. I defined what needs to be saved. Like what's the information, consumables. All I need to know is the identification, the consumable effect, the properties, the sprite path. Then we got a little loot table. We got material, stats, right? So I absolutely understand what's going on. I'm not confused. In tutorials, I feel like they like go back and forth from like creating the sprite, animating, scripting it, putting it into like a resource manager. Like I feel like there's a lot of back and forths and my brain is not like clicking. I think this was the test node. But anyways, next is state. So for this is the one I finished today. This is the game state manager singleton. I don't know what that is. I have to Google it. I know I just don't remember what a singleton is. But basically, this is the game manager. So what does the game manager do? Well, so a lot of the state in this game is really being done by the signals because the signals indicate events. So it says, yo, this character changed, or this character leveled up, or this currency has changed state. So here we have is, this is a currency function. We have a level up notifier. So these are setting helpers. Then the next thing is the one that had me like a little tricky was I was like looking at the combat manager singleton because I was also trying to understand the difference between like what really happens in a state layer and then what happens in the logic layer. So the combat manager is a good one. So the combat manager, right, you're sending a bunch of signals, and the aspects that are really state based are things like combat started and combat has ended. And is the player being attacked? Is the enemy being attacked? Now, the actual damage that's happening and being dealt and calculated, that's what's going to happen in the logic layer. But I split up the project into phases just to really help me. So, but yeah, nothing interesting. It's just, that's all I really got to say. I just went through, made all these resources, right? I made a data, then resources. So all my data set up for the entire game. Um, Next, we're doing auto loads. So we're doing like the comma manager, we're doing a game state manager, several other managers. But yeah, that's the great so far. Have a good day.